Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lori. I'm the Adult Community Engagement Coordinator here at the library, and I'd like to thank everyone so much for being here with us today. It's wonderful to see you all and to be able to share this time together. Just to let you know, this program is being recorded and will be available later in the week on YouTube. I'd like to begin with our land acknowledgement. The San Francisco Public Library acknowledges that we occupy the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. We recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. As uninvited guests, we affirm their sovereign rights as First Peoples and wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush community. We're especially excited to welcome the Northern California Book Awards today. For more than 40 years, these awards have celebrated the creativity and diversity of our region's writers and translators, honoring stories and voices that inspire us, move us, and remind us the power of literature to bring people together. With that, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Joyce and the Northern California Book Awards.
Thank you, Lori. Welcome to the 44th Annual Northern California Book Awards. The doors are open. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash, editor and chair of the Northern California Book Reviewers, a volunteer association of reviewers, editors, and others who write about books. This ceremony celebrates books published in 2024 by Northern California authors and California translators. These awards are presented by Poetry Flash with our world-class San Francisco Public Library and community partners, Women's National Book Association, San Francisco. Thank you for your wonderful volunteers, and Mechanics Institute Library. Each year we come together over books. We read and discuss and fret over them, seeking the best from hundreds of titles, finding in these books what we need to guide us through our cultural, political, and personal morass that we're all experiencing right now. Today, we gratefully celebrate all of these exceptional authors who helped us through. Every single nominated book is our very strong recommendation to you. The Northern California Book Awards celebrate excellence and diversity. We believe we are stronger together and better when we are learning together. If you are a book reviewer and would like to join us, contact me. Let's draw a bigger circle together. The Northern California book reviewers who selected these books are listed with gratitude at the back of your program. The comments that you hear today were all written by them. I include myself, but we were all in it together, NCBR jurors, and will be posted on the Northern California Book Awards page at poetryflash.org. NCBR member Pamela Berkman will present the Younger Readers Award. Pamela?
The Children's Literature Younger Readers nominees are Eloisa's Musical Window, Margarita Engel, illustrated by John Parra. This gorgeously illustrated book is inspired by stories from Margarita Engel's mother's childhood in Cuba. Young Eloise loves music but cannot afford a radio, so she finds music in the rhythms and melodies drifting through her open window. When her mother falls ill and the family cannot afford medicine, Eloisa wonders if La Musica can heal and comfort her mother, as it has always done for her. The Man Who Didn't Like Animals, Deborah Underwood, illustrated by Liuan Pham. This charmingly illustrated story concerns the courtship of cats, the friendship of dogs, the rowdy good nature of geese, the companionship of chickens, the cheerfulness of pigs, the goodness of goats, and the curiosity of cows. It's the sweet, funny, intriguing story of a lonely man who prefers a tidy house to the messy imperfection of love. Gradually, he comes to love these animals, and when he tries to throw them out so he can return to the sterile imperfection of a house in perfect order, his heart nearly breaks. The Night Market, Sina Wedlick, illustrated by Brianna Mukodiri Uchendu. Inspired by the authors and illustrators' memories of traditional Nigerian markets, the night market is a lush, magical feast for the eyes, ears, and imagination, and a joyful celebration of a culture. The illustrations capture the glow and shimmer of a fabulous market glittering in the night. This jewel of a book delivers on Sina Wedlick's wish, expressed in her author's note, to invite every child to visit with the turn of a page. The Young Readers Award goes to The Night Market, Sina Wedlick, illustrated by Brianna Mukodiri Ishendi. Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh my God, I am still in shock. I wrote my speech maybe half an hour ago. I truly did not expect to win. I just want to say I am so honored and grateful to be standing here right now. And to receive the Northern California Young Readers Award for the Night Market feels surreal. When I wrote those words, I truly did not think I would be reading them here today. This book started as a love letter to my childhood and the magic of markets that come alive under the light of a lantern. To see it be recognized means more to me than I can put into words. I want to thank the NCBA for everything you do to uplift stories that expand the imagination of children. To the other authors on the shortlist, Margarita Engel and Deborah Underwood, I am truly honored to be in your company. Your books are treasures, and to share this category with you is its own recognition. I also want to thank my incredible illustrator, Brianna Mukodiri Uchendu, whose art brought the night market to life in ways that still takes my breath away. Brianna, these pages shimmer with color, music, and soul. This is as much your award as it is mine. To my husband, Tom, who has believed in every word I've ever written, and to my children, Bryce, Sierra, and Rain, who are sitting right here in the audience and are being so quiet, I'm so grateful for you guys. You are my greatest cheerleaders and the reason I keep writing. You are the heartbeats behind my books. And finally, I would like to dedicate this award to children everywhere who love to stay up way past midnight and dream of adventures under the night sky in places both real and imagined. May you always have the courage to tell your own stories. Thank you.
NCBR member Susan McCarthy will present the Children's Literature Middle Grade Award. Susan?
The nominees in middle grade are The 10th Mistake of Hank Hooperman by Jennifer Choldenko. This story raises tough questions about kids forced to grow up too fast due to the failings of adults. 11-year-old Hank's mother has substance abuse issues. When she disappears again, he tells himself and 3-year-old sister Boo she'll be back soon, but now it's been a week. Hank and Boo eventually end up together in a new home, not the one he wanted, but a place where they can thrive. And in the frightening process, Hank discovers inner reserves of strength and learns what family means. The Long Way Around, Ann Nesbitt. Imagine a gripping wilderness survival story, but one where the protagonists pitted against cruel nature are not yet in their teens. Amy, her sister Vivian, and cousin Owen have wrangled permission to spend a night solo on the other side of a path from their parents' campsite in Sequoia National Park. When an earthquake blocks the pass, they have to find and take an arduous trail, the long way around. Making it home requires them to overcome personal challenges with strength, courage, and resilience. The Wrong Way Home, Kate O'Shaughnessy. Frankie lived a peripatetic life with her mother before arriving at The Ranch, a commune in upstate New York run by Dr. Ben. For 6 years, under the name of Fern, she experiences the commune, seeing more of Dr. Ben than her mother and not attending school. Late one night, her mother bundles her into a taxi. In California, they begin a new life with Frankie attending school. When she learns more about Dr. Ben and why her mother left, Frankie must decide whom to trust, what is truth, and what is home. The award goes to The Wrong Way Home, Kate O'Shaughnessy.
Hi, this is so exciting. It was such an honor to be nominated among such talented authors such as Jennifer and Anne. It was an honor just for that, so to win is just extraordinary. There are so many people who are responsible for this book coming to life, so many that it would take up all the time, and I'm going to do a short reading, so I'll just say thank you to the Northern California book reviewers for this honor, and also to my husband, Chris, who is here as my date. So I'll be reading a page and a half from the second chapter, where Fern, also Frankie, known as Frankie, and her mom are leaving the only place that Fern has known as her home for the past 6 years. She pulls into the road, her blinker clicking. Then she turns left, west, away from the rising sun. This isn't the way home. I point behind us. The ranch is back there. Mom doesn't look at me. I know, baby. Does this have anything to do with my right? Because this isn't an offsite, is it? I swallow. The question I'm about to ask is so horrible I can barely get the words out. Does Dr. Ben even know where we are? Of course he does. Only then do I notice her hands are clutching the wheel so tightly I can see the white outline of her knuckles. We drive all day long. We eat canned cranberry beans and pickled vegetables Mom brought from the ranch and only stop to use the bathroom. I keep asking where we're going and when we're going to turn around and go back. She only gives me vague half answers that don't actually tell me anything. It'll all be clear soon, and don't worry, just try to rest. And I'm trying to focus on the road. I promise I'll explain more later. I get angry. I raise my voice. I beg, but she still doesn't give me a good answer. We drive until the sun arcs through the sky and sinks down in front of us, making it hard to see. She hasn't dropped me anywhere. We haven't picked up anything up. No fuzzy chicks, no bags of seeds for the greenhouse, no new knitting needles or garden trowels or other tools, nothing. Finally, we pull into a motel parking lot right off the highway. Mom grabs both duffel bags and gets out. I don't move. She opens my door for me and stands there. Come on. No, I'm not moving until you tell me what's going on. You promised. To make my point, I slip my hand through the grab handle and grip it as hard as I can. When are we going back to the ranch? Mom sighs, a deep whooshing sort of sigh, like some important part of her is slipping out of her mouth and into the cold night air. Honey, she says, we're going to try something new for a little while. My heart starts beating so hard I can almost feel it in my throat. I stare at her. What does that even mean? It means, she swallows, it means we aren't going back. And just like that, my world cracks open. Thank you so much.
NCBR member Grace Feuerverger will present the Young Adult Award. Grace, I know you're here, right here.
At the outset, I'd like to say that all 3 nominees deserve to be winners. All of these books are breathtakingly beautiful on so many levels. But alas, we had to choose one book. And believe me, it was excruciatingly difficult. That said, the young adult nominees are When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. Wynton Marsalis said, quote, every moment in jazz is a moment of crisis, and you bring all your skills to bear on that crisis, unquote. The Fall siblings, all named after jazz trumpeters, inhabit a funhouse mirror of the California wine country. Nelson uses magical realist sensibilities to heighten beauty and cruelty, abundance and emptiness, infinite creative invention, and the bottomless human capacity for self-destruction. The atmospherics are captivating, and the prose feels lit from within. Everything We Never Had by Randy Rebay. Everything We Never Had tracks 4 generations of Filipino-American men from rural Ilocos to the fields and orchards of the Salinas Valley to Philadelphia during the pandemic lockdown. The progression of generations tells an archetypal immigrant story, gradual, against all odds financial security, but also conflicted identities and family dysfunction. This is an extremely important book that resonates deeply, especially in this current moment in history. Rebay's characters are ringingly authentic. His use of 4 voices coming from different contexts brilliantly highlights each protagonist. Lunar New Year Love Story by Jean Luen Yang and Le Yuen Pham. Best-selling graphic novel creators Yang and Pham tell a poignant story about fate, family, community, falling in love, Valentine's Day, and the lion dance. Set in Oakland, there are Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese cultural elements. No one in Valentina's Vietnamese-American family has ever found lasting love. She believes that she only has a year to find true love or lose it forever. This brilliantly rendered young adult love story is laid out with a fresh, original, adolescent sensibility. And the Young Adult Award goes to When the World Tips Over by Jandy Nelson. Congratulations, what a book it was.
Thank you. Oh my God, I'm so shocked. Honestly, I've never been to a book award where you don't know ahead of time, and sort of like the Academy Awards, I feel like. But I'm really so honored. I really thought this one was going to Randy or Jean and Lei Win, and I love their books so much. I just think that they're magnificent, so I'm just thrilled. I want to thank the Northern California book reviewers. It means so much to me, this award, because the book, for me, is very much a love letter to Northern California. And one of the things I wanted to do was explore the California dream and how it manifests over 3 generations. And so this award is very important. I'd also like to say my mother's here with me today, and I'd like to publicly say that she's nothing like the mothers in this book. She's the best, and I dedicated my first book to her, but I just want her to know that all my books are dedicated to her and for her. I love her very, very much, and I'm going to read just the opening of the book. This book, I've been saying, is basically everything I've ever wanted to write in one book. It's kind of 4 novels in one, and there's 5 narrators from 14 to 45, so you don't really get a sense of the book, but this is how it opens. This is Dizzy Fall. She's 12 years old, and she's a bit of a nut. The morning of the day, 12-year-old Dizzy Fall walked into the path of the speeding 18-wheeler and encountered the rainbow-haired girl. Everything was going wrong. In the divorce with her best friend Lizard, who now went by his real name Tristan, Lizard, now Tristan, had been granted popularity, a cool haircut, and a girlfriend named Melinda. Dizzy had been granted nothing. They'd been a twosome since first grade, wandering around in each other's innermost secrets, baking through the list of Pastry Magazine's most ambitious desserts, as well as their mutual favorite activity, surfing the internet for pertinent information regarding existence. Lizard's area of expertise was weather and natural disasters, while Dizzy's was all cool things. Lately, those cool things had been stories about saints who rose into the air in fits of ecstasy, Himalayan yogis who could turn their bodies into stone, Buddha who made duplicates of himself and shot fire from his fingers. Reading about these things made Dizzy's soul buzz, and Dizzy wanted a buzzy soul, a buzzy everything. Also, recently, pre-divorce, Dizzy and Lizard had kissed for 3 seconds to see if they'd feel the endorphins Lizard learned about online or the spontaneous internal explosions Dizzy read about in the romance novels her mother kept behind the literary ones on the shelf. Not my mother. Particularly Live Forever Now, starring Samantha Brooksweather, which was Dizzy's favorite. Lizard thought romance novels were totally useless, but Dizzy learned so much from them. She wanted the door of her wild femininity to swing open already, her fiery furnace to ignite, her passion-moistened depths to awaken. And although, unlike Samantha Brooksweather, she'd never seen a real live penis, from these books she knew an absolute ton about stiff members, turgid shafts, and throbbing spears. Unfortunately, however, during the 3-second kiss with Lizard, neither of them had felt endorphins nor spontaneous internal explosions. Thanks.
NCBR member Sharon Coleman will present the California Translation in Poetry Award.
Thank you so much. I just want to recognize Joyce Jenkins for her leadership. The nominees for the California Translation and Poetry Award are Guerrilla Blooms by Daniela Contrileo, translated from Spanish by Edith Adams. Poet and activist Daniela Contrileo's Guerrilla Blooms features a trilingual presentation that includes the translations of the poems, also by Danny Reveco, into the language of the Mapuche people. In searing lines with forceful, disruptive images, these brilliant poems document urban Mapuche resistance to the colonial powers of Chile and Argentina. The sequences masquerade as narratives, but their real creation is a voice, expertly articulated by the translators, that pushes back at authoritarian power. No Gods Live Here by Conceição Lima, translated from Portuguese by Shook. This is a groundbreaking publication, one of the first comprehensive collections by an African poet, and the only translation of a woman from the small island nation of São Tomé. Conceição Lima's poetic oeuvre, spanning over 20 years, speaks through the history of colonization and liberation, while evoking a spirituality that arises from the terrain of the island. Translator Shook has adeptly rendered the poems into English with extensive consultations with Lima. To the Letter, poems by Tomasz Roginski, translated from Polish by Mira Rosenthal. Born in 1970, Tomasz Roginski is the author of over a dozen books of poetry and prose in his native Poland. The poems in To the Letter move from casual to chatty to devastating in quick shifts, associative thoughts leaping like small flames. The poems are populated with lovers and travelers, unable to find a place of arrival among the changing hours. Mira Rosenthal's outstanding translations read like original poems in English, subtle, musical, and swift, while never slipping into translation knees. And the California Translation in Poetry Award goes to No Gods Live Here by Conceição Lima, translated from Portuguese by Shook, and accompanied to the stage.
Thank you, the book reviewers of Northern California. Thank you to my publisher and everyone there. Thank you to Conceição Lima, to Archie Lyle, lying behind me. I began this book 3 years before they were born, and here they are. I'm going to read one poem from this book called Afro-Insularity. They left the islands a legacy of hybrid words and gloomy plantations, rusted mills, breathless sterns, sonorous aristocratic names, and the legend of a shipwreck on Sete Pedras. They arrived here from the north, by mandate or by chance, in the service of their king, navigators and pirates, slavers, thieves, smugglers, simple men, rebellious outcasts too, and Jewish infants so tender they withered like burnt ears of corn. On the ships, they brought compasses, trinkets, seeds, experimental plants, atrocious sorrows, a standard of stone pale as wheat, and other dreamless, rootless cargoes, because the entire island was a port and a dead-end road. All its hands were black pitchforks and hoes. And there were living footprints in the fields slashed like scars. Each coffee bush now breathes a dead slave. And on the islands, they were bold, arrogant statues on street corners, 100 or so churches and chapels for 1,000 square kilometers, and the insurgent syncretism of roadside Christmas shrines. And there was the palatial cadence of the usua, the scent of garlic and zete doshi on the timpi and the ubagatela, and in the kalulu, bay leaves blended with palm oil and the perfume of rosemary and basil from the gardens on our family land. And the specters, tools of empire, melted into the insular clocks in a structure of ambiguous clarities and secular condiments, patron saints and toppled fortresses, cheap wines and shared dawns. At times, I think of their pallid skeletons, their hair putrid at the edge of the sea. Here, in this fragment of Africa, where, facing the south, a word rises high like a painful flag. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next category is translation in prose. The nominees for the California Translation in Prose Award are Chronicles of a Village by Nguyen Thanh Huynh, translated from Vietnamese by Huynh Huynh Huong. This exquisitely unique novel reveals the world of a rural village, its mythologies and histories, its intricate relations with birds and mountains, its growing seasons and traditional crafts. All this undergoes slow attrition under the continual attacks of history. From the period-ending French colonialism to wars with the USA and the communist takeover, translator Huynh Huynh Huong has adeptly rendered this deeply poetic prose into English, transposing the distinct sentence style and lyricism of the original. Jennifer, or A French Princess, The Truly Unknown Islands by Orwell, Neto, translated from Portuguese by Denise Borges and Catherine F. Baker. Intriguingly, this reader is not sure when this book is journalism and when it glides into fiction. The main character, Jennifer, is unique. You've never seen someone like her before in a book. Jennifer uses inventive language to imagine herself becoming a marine biologist, a fashion model, a unicorn. Denise Borges and Catherine F. Baker have chiseled an English text that conveys the creative phrasing and slang expressions in the Portuguese original. The tears and smiles of things, stories, sketches, meditation by Andrei Sodomora, translated from Ukrainian by Roman Ivishku and Sabrina Jaji. Ukrainian classicist scholar Andrei Sodomora is renowned for his superb translations of Greek and Roman. But as this volume demonstrates, he is also a master of prose meditation, a genial, thoughtful companion, aware of time passing in ways that echo Virgil and Horace, Seneca and Augustine. Sodomora leads us through the rainy, cold streets of Kyiv. Gracefully translated by Roman Ivashku and Sabrina Jaji, this educated, elusive prose offers fragments of the present, discovering in them the scent of the past. And the California Translation in Prose Award goes to Chronicles of a Village by Huynh Thanh Huynh, translated from the Vietnamese by Nguyen Nguyen Hoang. The translator, Nguyen Nguyen Hoang, is doing research right now in a village in Vietnam where the Wi-Fi is pretty sketchy. So she did not send a video, but she did email us this statement, which I will read. On behalf of the author, thank you for this honor. Thank you for reading and recognizing this Vietnamese story of love, sorrow, nationhood, villagehood, war wounds, peace dreams, mountains, and skies. Translated into an English, a rhythm both familiar and strange. Once again, deep gratitude to all the readers, reviewers, editors, community partners that make this award possible. You give literature a new lease on life. And I'm going to read two paragraphs from the novel. I went in the fall so that I could listen to the stirrings of the mountains and forests. The wilting leaves were a trace of sadness, and the yellowing foliage a trace of gloom. As the forest shed visions of decay and recovery into my mind, the fallen leaves were turning into a poetry of the fall, where I was busy pondering the complexity of cyclicality. There must have been others, perhaps many, who are also living on this planet with their dreams. Going to the Mun Mountain was my way of following my ancestral legacy of dreams. A cloud passed, or was it a shadow of a bird flying over a stream? Or was it a wandering dream of the fish and crabs? Who could know? Even the rocks, without ever speaking, could be hiding their secret sentiments. Suddenly, I see something flash through my memory, something languishing and desolate, like a silhouette of a bird, and then a sound begins to stir in my head, a thrilling and irresistible sound, the song of the gook birds. Mun forest, mun forest. I went to the Mun Mountain once again. How many times had I gone to the Mun Mountains now? I no longer remember. It was all but a dream. There was a change in the voices of the mountain birds. No more sorrowful tones urging the desolate clouds to hurry up and return to the north, where the gray echoes were bred. Their melodic sounds were a little hastier, a little more dramatic. And at the same time, they were a condensation of 1,000-year gathering. The bird songs gathered the vital spirit of a species that took refuge in the vast sky. Thank you.
NCBR member Susan Gunter will present the General Nonfiction Award. Susan. Lovely to see you.
And I also want to say thank you to Joyce. And I can hardly say right now how important I think this work is, that this whole group is doing with books. These writers, these judges, these reviewers, it's just, and I've done this for years now. To me, this is the most important year for us to acknowledge what we can achieve as humans. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the nominees I think I have 35 books this year, many wonderful books. The nominees for general fiction are Riding Like the Wind, The Life of Sonora Babb, Iris Jamal Dunkel. Iris Dunkel recovers the life of Sonora Babb, child of the Depression, a remarkable writer who may have surpassed John Steinbeck in depicting America's Great Depression. She received accolades during her lifetime, was a lover of Ralph Ellison, taught at UCLA. Bennett Cerf offered her a book contract for her book about the Depression, but suddenly Cerf canceled. Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath had just been published to great success, but Steinbeck had used her notes. Her own Great Plains Depression book wasn't published until the end of her life. Okay, the next book is The Way That Leads Among the Lost, Life, Death, and Hope in Mexico City's Anexos, Angela Garcia. The Way That Leads Among the Lost is both an anthropologist's view of Mexico City's Anexos and an attempt to make peace with Garcia's own troubled childhood and youth. The author interweaves her field research in these homes that are dedicated to saving Mexicans from the country's drug horrors with recollections of her own growing up without parents or a home. While Garcia positions herself as an observer of this subculture, her own painful memories color her observations, giving her narrative a compelling tone. Stolen Pride, Lost Shame, and the Rise of the Right, Arlie Russell Hochschild. In 2017, Arlie Hochschild began over 4 years of interviews with residents of Pike County, Kentucky, the second poorest of America's 435 congressional districts. She begins with the planning of a white supremacist march in Pikeville, led by a neo-Nazi. She takes a close look at these rural citizens with a focus on the men, ferreting out the emotions that drive him, particularly shame and pride. Her measured responses give readers an eye-opening picture of an area that time seems to have left behind. The Island, War and Belonging in Auden's England, Nicholas Jenkins. This analysis of W.H. Auden's early poetry relies on extensive research and careful scrutiny of multiple poems to achieve a new view of the poet's thematic centers. Jenkins finds strong echoes of World War I's traumas in a concomitant desire to return to a more grounding rural England. A kind of insular poetic conservatism marks these first poems. The poems themselves suggest a kind of war anxiety and a belief that a poem might reflect a collective voice. Okay, the last one is Map of Future Ruins on Borders and Belonging, Lauren Markham. Markham presents readers with a put-it-together-yourself map of the past, current, and future state of immigration on this planet. As immigrants move from one habitat to another, so Markham gives readers a poignant picture of one of today's most vexing and painful issues. Her personal goal is ending immigration detention. She stresses the economic advantages for countries who allow immigrants to enter freely and work, highlighting the plights of humanitarian workers who try to help them. Okay, so this was a tough call. This year, the General Nonfiction Award goes to The Island, War and Belonging in Auden's England by Nicholas Jenkins. Nicholas Jenkins is at a retreat, is not able to be here today, but Joyce said that he sent a video that I think we're going to see.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Jenkins. I'm truly sorry that I can't be with you this afternoon to share in the event that you're participating in directly. I'm here only virtually because I'm on a retreat at the moment and I'm not allowed to retreat from my retreat. So I can't be there to talk and discuss the books that you've been celebrating today with you, as I would love to have done. My book, The Island, is about a very small, short moment in the arc of the career of the poet W.H. Auden. In fact, career is probably not a great word to use in relation to Auden, or many poets for that matter. Auden thought of poetry as being a vocation for him, had a kind of religious dimension to it. And I tried to understand Auden's work in relation to one of the main markers of modern identity, which is nationality. In Auden's case, his own intensely ambivalent relationship to his Englishness. And I took around 280,000 words to try and respond adequately to half a sentence from the philosopher Hannah Arendt, who knew Auden quite well in New York in the 1950s and the 1960s, and who, after Auden died, wrote a beautiful obituary for him that was published in the New Yorker. And in that obituary, Arendt talks about her perception of Auden as having something remote and mysterious about him. She talks about the necessary secretiveness of a great poet. The necessary secretiveness of a great poet. It's such a beautiful phrase. And I'm not sure I got to the bottom of the secrets. In fact, I'm absolutely sure that I didn't. But I tried to respond to Arendt's luminous insight in the book. And I hope, if anything, that the work that I contributed will just turn back people to the beauty, the originality, the strangeness, the Delphic quality of Auden's early poetry. I know it turned me back to them. I started writing my book thinking I'm in love with Auden's poetry, and I ended it by thinking I'm in love with Auden's poetry. Thank you again, everybody. I really, truly, sincerely appreciate this honor.
Now, for creative nonfiction. NCBR member Susan Wills, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, will present the Creative Nonfiction Award. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Susan Wells.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce, for all you do. Here are the nominees. Mangela Martin, The Last Fire Season, A Personal and Pyro-Natural History. All Californians have experienced fire season, whether they watched flames creep closer to their communities, breathed smoke-choked air, or anxiously followed the news as fire ate acre after acre. Mangela Martin lived through the 2020 fires in Sonoma County and relives their devastation in compelling prose. She makes us understand that harm and renewal is necessary, but that humans exacerbated the process and must learn to live with the consequences. Dorsey Nunn with Lee Romney, What Kind of Bird Can't Fly? A Memoir of Resilience and Resurrection. A longtime leading advocate for California prisoners, Dorsey Nunn says his memoir, which traces his odyssey from street thug to inmate to activist, is a tribute to camaraderie, commitment, and grassroots organizing. It's also about the devastating effects of racially restrictive housing covenants that trapped Black families in poverty amid the wealth of the San Francisco Peninsula. By turns gritty, warm, wounded, and loving, this book carries us along on Nunn's journey from imprisonment to illumination and hope. Unfortunately, Dorsey recently learned that his book has been banned from all state prisons in California. It was in a state prison that he learned how to read, and where the autobiography of Malcolm X made him believe that he could be much more than the person he was at the time of his arrest. Our next nominee is Grace Lowe Prasad, The Translator's Daughter, a memoir. Grace Lowe Prasad might have known she was writing a creation myth for the displaced when she sat down to compose The Translator's Daughter. It's an exceptional narrative of a life that veered from her initial plans to a challenging, unexpected place. It's also a reminder of the effects of tyranny. In this memoir, there's a clear connection between the tides of politics and the home that language provides, not as a slogan, but as a lived experience. Brontez Purnell, 10 Bridges I've Burnt, a memoir in verse. 10 Bridges I've Burnt is a stunning memoir by Brontez Purnell, a writer, musician and frontman of the Younger Lovers, performance artist, and zine maker. In Purnell's usual, boldly phrased, unashamed poetry, 10 Bridges is sometimes relentlessly direct, but with a comic edge that makes it all more comfortable. I am of the ilk, he writes, who will be done in by sugar, salt, and flour well before cocaine or ketamine. This book should be carried around as a reality check. Irvin D. Yalom and Benjamin Yalom, Hour of the Heart, Connecting in the Here and Now. When renowned psychiatrist Irvin D. Yalom realized his memory was failing, he decided that instead of providing long-term therapy, he would take the unconventional step of meeting his patients one time for only an hour. Yalom went on to chronicle a moving collection of these therapy sessions. The single one-hour format was a new therapeutic adventure that yields rich moments of insight for his patients, painful self-awareness for Yalom, and a heartful, illuminating experience for readers. And the award for creative nonfiction goes to Mangela Martin, The Last Fire Season, A Personal and Pyro-Natural History.
Wow, thank you. This is very, very cool. Thank you to the Northern California book reviewers. Book reviewers are amazing and doing increasingly scarce work, so thank you for that. I just want to say this is an amazing cohort of authors. Each of these books in this category, and many of the other categories as well, really do an amazing job of showing ways in which personal stories can bring to light and illuminate greater systems and also challenge those systems. So if any of the other creative nonfiction noms are here, could you stand up? And could we give them a round of applause? Also grateful to the library for hosting us. Librarians, especially, and everyone who work at the library are doing amazing work at the front lines of a great many crises. So grateful to be here in the library. I'm not going to read. I just am going to leave you with something that I use as the epigraph in my book, which is a quote from the filmmaker Agnes Varda in her book, The Beaches of Agnes, or in her film, The Beaches of Agnes. She says, if you opened people up, you'd find landscapes. And I actually think that phrase works the other way too. If you open landscapes up, you find people. This is a book about a landscape. It's a book about Northern California. And it's also a book about the ways in which we find community and resilience and joy and grief and power right in our own neighborhoods. So this is a pretty cool neighborhood to be in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. The Groundbreaker Award is presented to pioneers in the literary community. That's an apt description of Paul Yamazaki, pioneering principal book buyer for City Lights Books for over 50 years, and author of Reading the Room, A Bookseller's Tale. The publisher says, Paul Yamazaki leads us through the stacks of storied City Lights booksellers in San Francisco. The care and prowess of his approach to book buying, his upbringing in a Japanese-American family in Southern California, and moving to San Francisco at the height of revolutionary foment, working with legendary figures in the book publishing industry like Ferlinghetti, Sonny Mehta, and others, and his vision for the future of bookselling, navigating building trust with readers and nurturing relationships across the literary industry. Yamazaki testifies to the value of generosity, sharing knowledge, and dialogue in a life devoted to books. My old pal, Elliot Weinberger, said, "One comes to the book expecting shop talk and finds instead a vision of the bookstore as a spiritual, intellectual, and political microcosm of the universe." Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. The NCBA Groundbreaker Award goes to Paul Yamazaki.
Thank you all so much. Well, thank you. All of us here today, I accept this on behalf of my colleagues at City Lights, past and present. City Lights has always been a collective effort, and and I think one of the weaknesses of our culture is we focus on individual kind of achievement when it is actually a collective achievement. And our work at City Lights has always been about community. It's always been about conversation, and I think most importantly in these trying times that we live in right now, that is about the beacon of possibility as well as informed resistance. And so all of you here, particularly the writers and the editors and publishers, bring us the building blocks of how to strip away all the unessentials and get to kind of what, for each one of us, is how to create our own ability of what's possible. And so it's the privilege of being a bookseller that writers and editors and publishers do not get is we get to see the joy of discovery, that each reader, each potential reader comes up and discovers something in our bookstore and the bookstores around us. And that's the other thing that is really fortunate. City Lights has never existed by itself, and from the very beginning. And so the Fred Cody Award, so City Lights, Cody's books, Kepler's, San Francisco Poetry Center were all founded within a 2-year period between 53 and 55. And from that time forward, we have kind of moved as a community of conversation, a community of conscience that has kind of continued to develop. There are people in this room today that have contributed to me personally, have contributed to City Lights, and have moved that forward. And I think, as we prepare to celebrate Rebecca Solnit, Paradise Built in Hell is really the clearest example of what I mean by kind of not just resistance, but presenting us the possibility of how we each build that future. And so it is really, I'm grateful to the National Northern California Book Credits Award, and particularly to Joyce and Poetry Flash. As a young bookseller, Poetry Flash presented a gateway to what is really possible, that there was a much wider world. So I thank you so much for all being here, and it really is a pleasure and privilege to receive this award. Thank you.
The NCBR member, Linda Michael Cassidy, will present poetry.
Thank you, Joyce, and thank you all for being here. First, let me say this was a banger year for Northern California poetry. Great, find all the books. Poetry's doing a great job in these times, which is what we needed to do. So first up, the Palace of 40 Pillars, Armand Davoudian. Armand Davoudian is in touch with the poetic past, both in form, for example, his ingenious, subtle rhyme schemes, but also with the eternal, a poetry that reaches straight into often dismissed tradition and brings the best back with it. Named after a palace in Isfahan, Iran, in which reflective pools double the existing 20 columns into 40. The Palace of 40 Pillars also amplifies its resonance, reflecting back onto history, language, traditions, and historic failings. Coachella Elegy by Christian Gillette Coachella Elegy is spare and unsettling, moving, always moving, through hotels, pools, highways, and stunning vistas. The book is Californian in so many ways. How does one even begin to think of serious illness, aging parents, or the loss of a sibling, while at the same time floating in a kidney-shaped pool behind a mid-century modern hotel, a cocktail arm's length away? Gillette is an expert in contrasts, proving that the glint of the sun on our beautiful Pacific and trouble can and must coexist. Septet for the Luminous Ones, Fahima Ife. In Septet for the Luminous Ones, Fahima Ife's remarkable second collection, she uses multiple registers of language and storytelling while navigating between speaking to an intimate you and a larger, equally intimate community. The sonic resonance is such that you can hear these poems while they're read and connect to Ife's address of the Black arts movement, the African diaspora, and Caribbean culture. Woke Up No Light, Layla Motley. Layla Motley's Woke Up No Light traces the speaker unearthing who she is in relation to her family, the world she was born to, and its regard/disregard of her Black female body. Former Youth Poet Laureate of Oakland and author of the award-winning novel Nightcrawling, Motley writes about Blackness and womanhood with such fullness that we feel the weight as well as the celebration. Percussing the Thinking Jar, Ma Shane Wynn. In her arresting collection, Wynne dwells on the nature of thinking and how it can be manifested in language. What emerges is a new process for making poems called the thought log, an experimental short lyric in which Wynne seems to trickle her observations, feelings, and memories onto the page. Red clover, ruta, amaranthus, that line, a triple set of images or words that Wynne turns to again and again, serve as a through line or maybe a drum line in this truly innovative book. I love hearing your dreams, Matthew Zapruder. The declarative title of Zapruder's collection feels unusually intimate and whimsical. In this book, the reader will experience the sensation of standing in for the various objects of the poet's devotion. In some cases, Zapruder's wife or son, in other, his beloved poet friends, real or imagined. Throughout I Love Hearing Your Dreams, there's an undertone of sadness and grief, not only for friends who have passed, such as Dean Young, but also for community and solidarity and what we used to consider the truth itself. The Poetry Award goes to The Palace of 40 Pillars, Armen Davudian.
Hi. Thank you to the Northern California book reviewers and everyone involved. And I feel like the real honor is to have been considered alongside my fellow nominees, many of whose poems I love. I'm going to read the first poem in my book. Coming out of the shower. I shut my eyes under the scalding stream, scrubbing off last night's dream, when suddenly I hear your voice again, as though it caught in the clogged drain and was sent bubbling back up from the other world where you are not my mother. This time, it's really you. I'm really here. I blink. We do not disappear. Dad left, you say, to shower at the shop, so I don't need to stop just yet. And yet I do, unable to resume old customs, unlike you. In a one-bath, four-person household, we learn what we mustn't see, growing in time so coolly intimate with one another's silhouette behind the opaque frosted shower screen that once more stands between us two. While at the mirror you apply foundation and concealer, I wash out my hair with rosewater shampoo, which means I'll smell like you all day. Mama, I shout, I'm coming out. And as you look away, I knot around me tight your lavender robe de chambre, cinching my waist, and clamber out of the tub, taking care not to step outside the cotton mat and drip on the cracked floor you have polished with such zeal. We are mirrored on each tile. Yet you'd forgive the spillage, or forget. What else will you love me despite? Thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fiction will be presented by NCBR member Jane Chaba. I practiced. Jane Chabatari. Yes. I did it.
Who is shorter than Joyce. It's an honor to be here today to present this award in fiction. But I wanted to mention how much gratitude I have for cultural leaders like Rebecca Solnit and Paul Yamazaki and all the finalists and award winners in this room today. And to Joyce Jenkins and her team. Aren't they remarkable? They're just remarkable. I'm going to take a cue from Angela Martin and ask the fiction finalists to please stand. There are 5 of them, and they are remarkable writers. At a time in which reality seems to be shape-shifting on a daily, even an hourly basis, we need innovative writers like these 5 fiction finalists and the others we've heard from today to guide us forward into an uncertain future. I urge you to read them, support them, follow their evolving work. If it's hard to have hope when you wake in the morning, I get hope from the idea that we have writers like this working out there today. The finalists are Headshot, Rita Bullwinkle, sorry, I have a cough drop in my mouth. In Rita Bullwinkle's exhilarating first novel, Headshot, she experiments with form and bends time in uncanny ways. The setting is the 12th annual Women's 18 and Under Daughter of America Cup at Bob's Boxing Palace in Reno, Nevada, July 14 to 15th, 20XX. Throughout, Bullwinkle maintains a steady beat based on 8 2-minute rounds. Sorry, I was at a wrestling match last night. Based on 8 2-minute rounds per match. The referee's calls, the sun's path, the bodily damage one fist can do, and the inimitable intimacy of sports competitions. How we know our time travelers, Anita Felicelli. These haunting stories open with a tsunami bearing down on a drought-stricken California coast, with 2 friends ready to party despite the danger. Until the Seas Rise is a brilliant opening to a set of speculative stories distinguished by surreal experiences, emotional disconnection, external disruption, technological twitches, and a steady stream of time-traveling paradoxes. Felicelli captures the drastic climate change of Northern California with its record heat, wildfires, and atmospheric rivers. Exhibit, R.O. Kwan. 2 exciting, creative, sensual young women are magnetically drawn to each other. Photographer Jin meets ballerina Latia. Is sexual passion a religious experience? But Jin, once a passionate believer, has felt religious ecstasy is only a confused step on the way to something more fulfilling. But what? She can do little but accept her pleasures in the sex game she plays with Ladia, and they could well be a step towards an unknown star which may not be there at all. The Forgetters, Stories, Greg Saras. This is a profoundly moving collection of linked stories, at once timeless and essential for this moment. The stories unfurl as a conversation between question woman and answer woman, who are both crows and humans, and both necessary for stories to exist. Told in the traditional style of the Southern Pomo and Coast Miwok, the stories are alive with the voice of the patient storyteller, characters who are wise and also foolish, human and also animal, and the palpable presence of the eager listener. In this ravishing world, Nina Schuyler. In this ravishing world is equally astonishing in its ambition and in its beauty. In these linked stories, characters enact their own roles in the catastrophe of climate change. At the center of all the stories is Eleanor, a 70-year-old environmental economist who receives an award for her life's work just as she's falling into hopelessness. As it turns out, it's not the award that lifts Eleanor's spirits, but a group of children who still believe change is possible and who draw her into a terrifying but transformative act of protest. And the fiction award goes to Rita Bullwinkle. Rita Bullwinkle.
Hi, I'm so deeply honored by this award. I am so deeply of this place. I was raised across the Bay Area, and to be among my fellow writers and reviewers and booksellers and thinkers here tonight, this afternoon is so wonderful. Thank you to the Northern California Book Reviewers Association. Your work is so rare and valuable, bringing books in conversation with your minds and with other books. It's just such important work. Thank you to my fellow finalists. I so deeply admire the work of Anita, Reese, Greg, and Nina. I think I'm just going to read you a little bit from this book, which is set in Reno, Nevada primarily, but it very much does circle the Bay Area. It is structured as a sports tournament, as a series of face-offs. And in the third match, there are two cousins, Iggy and Izzy Lang, from Michigan, who fight each other, which is quite bad luck. And later in this chapter that I'm going to read from, they do go to San Francisco. But I'm going to read to you just the first page from the beginning of this fight. Izzy Lang versus Iggy Lang. In Douglas, Michigan, there's a town square with a statue of a dog that saved someone during a war. Iggy Lang wants to be a war hero. She would do anything to be a war hero and have a statue made for her in a park, too. Iggy would kill people, be killed by people, or turn her body into a dog's body just to have a statue of her in a town square that people passed and touched and looked at and stopped and talked about with affection and joy. Maybe I just want to be a dog, thinks Iggy. Iggy has always had a purple stain on and above her lip, which already makes her look like a marked animal. Iggy thinks the spot is what saved her from liking people. Everyone else she knows is flat-minded and full of admiration for the television. Iggy just wants to be the best in the world at something, and Iggy is the best in the world at something. She's one of the best 15-year-olds in the world at boxing. She's got 3 more years before she ages up and out of this tournament, which means that by the time she's 18, she'll be a reigning champion because Iggy is going to win this fight and the one after, and then she'll shapeshift into a 1940s spotted Labrador so that someone can make a statue out of her and put it on a green. The outside of Bob's Boxing Palace looks like styrofoam, like you could sink your nails into it and chip off a little bit of the building and make the chipped off bits blend in with a bowl of cottage cheese. Adults and people in general are always telling Iggy why the fact that her face is stained purple doesn't matter, like it's some kind of impediment. She's never understood this. The thing she is self-conscious about is her crooked teeth. It's one of the reasons she started boxing. She saw her cousin Izzy fight a match and was jealous of her mouthguard. God, I would look good in that mouthguard, thought Iggy. The thought came to her 1 year ago when she was 14. The layout of Douglas, Michigan is like anywhere, could be anywhere, which is how so many places feel to these girl boxers. They drive or have their parents drive them to far out parts of the country that look like nowhere, and even the places that look like somewhere have that Bob's Boxing Palace outside styrofoam feel, with the facade taller than the actual roofing, and the malls with the Bass Pros, and the parking lots that swim for days, the parking lots that greet them at the tournaments they compete in these runways of concrete from their homes to these gyms in faraway states. The light does vary some, and the way the equipment feels, that varies too. And the judges, where do they find them? Whose boyfriend of a sister are they attached to? The judges are same-faced, but different every time. Men, all of them, who to the girls look uniformly ancient, but are actually aged from 26 to 55. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you. The Northern California Book Awards were co-founded by the late Fred Cody, legendary Berkeley bookseller and reviewer, in 1981. He simply wanted to talk books over lunch with his pals, including the late poet, historian, reviewer, Peter Carroll. Since then, the award in Fred Cody's name has gone to an amazing array of our most crucial writers and literary figures. And also, just a moment here, a past Fred Cody Award winner, of course, is Malcolm Margolin, who we just lost. And we're thinking of him. This year's Fred Cody Award for Lifetime Achievement and Service goes to acclaimed essayist, historian, and activist, Rebecca Solnit. She is the author of more than 20 books, writing on feminism, Western and Indigenous history, the environment, politics, place, and art. Her works include No Straight Road Takes You There, Essays for Uneven Terrain, Orwell's Roses, Recollections of My Nonexistence, a memoir, Men Explain Things to Me, a classic, A Paradise Built in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster, A Field Guide to Getting Lost, Storming the Gates of Paradise, Landscapes for Politics, Wanderlust, A History of Walking, Not Too Late, Changing the Climate Story from Despair to Possibility, and many more, a book she co-edited. Rebecca Solnit asks the crucial question, who gets to shape the narrative of our times? As she reports, she is an independent writer since 1988, a product of the California public education system from kindergarten to graduate school. She writes for The Guardian, serves on the board of the climate group Oil Change International, and launched the climate project nottoolateclimate.com. In regard to that effort, she quotes Octavia Butler, "We don't have to wait for anything at all. What we have to do is start." Adam Hawkschild, also a Fred Cody Award winner, tells us, Rebecca Solnit is a national literary treasure, a passionate, close-to-the-ground reporter with the soul and voice of a philosopher poet. And unlike so many who write about the great injustices of this world, she is an optimist whose faith is deeply grounded in a knowledge of history. She gives us not just hope, but zest for the battles ahead. We are thrilled and deeply honored to present the Fred Cody Award for Lifetime Achievement and Service to one of our brightest lights and greatest hopes, Rebecca Solnit.
Thank you so much. I am so honored. You know, sometimes readers come up to me and thank me. Oh my God, are we having an emergency? Are we done having an emergency? Okay. Am I an emergency? Are we all just emerging into a new era? So, Lifetime Achievement Award, although I have to say, I did have something in The Guardian this morning, and I have a book coming out in March, so the Lifetime still has some legs in it. But I flew home from New Mexico for this. I was just so moved and honored. There are fancy awards that are known internationally, etc. But this is my community. I belong here. I had to go to New Orleans to learn. There's a New Orleans thing. You belong to your community. You never leave, no matter what happens to you. It's why Fats Domino and the Marsalis family never really left the lower Ninth Ward. It's why, even though Silicon Valley makes me incredibly angry a lot of the time, I haven't left the Bay Area, let alone San Francisco. And oh my God, my beloved great nieces just came into the room. And those were my tall brothers who stood up with my lovely sister-in-law to let me out a moment ago, and my lovely niece, Kyla. And anyway, I've got a bunch of family here, a bunch of friends here. I wrote you a little talk. It says, I and we are wildlife whose natural habitat is libraries and bookstores. When it comes to physical space, because they contain the books in which minds roam free through time and space, in which we encounter Dogen and Dante and Sappho and Black Elk, and others long since gone, meet ideas and possibilities, meet each other in that deep way that AI can never replace, because when you read a work of literature, you encounter another human being in their deepest solitude. Books are places where we meet each other in our deepest solitude, which is our deepest self. There is no substitute for that. It's a miracle every time it happens. We're sitting below about 1 million books in which that happens, and that itself is an astonishment. So, hello and thank you, people of the book. There's a lot of versions of who the people of the book are, and and that might be a Jewish joke, but never mind. So, we are wildlife because books freed us to reach beyond the particulars of time and place and self. And we are here, the Bay Area, which has been a liberatory place for writing, a place where poetry broke free 70 years ago, a place that faces Asia, shares a border with Mexico. What we now call California was and is a place of astonishing indigenous linguistic and cultural diversity and creativity, and that too has been and is and will be at the heart of the stories and voices of this place. This place people came to as a refuge from orthodoxies and genocides, a place to rethink what is possible, this place for liberation. We stand here on the plaza across from San Francisco City Hall, or we stand here across the plaza from San Francisco City Hall, where the student movements of the 1960s began in 1961, with San Francisco State students protesting against the House Un-American Activities Committee and being washed down those glamorous marble steps, now more familiar from wedding photos, with fire hoses. So we stand in such an extraordinary place. I am of the Bay Area, though not born here, but it was here that I learned to read thanks to, I always forget, is it Mrs. Diamond or Mrs. Felipe, which one was kindergarten or first grade in Novato? But I learned to read. I became a person who knew how to open those treasure boxes that are books. Over there on Coast Miwok territory where I grew up. And it was here that I've haunted libraries and bookstores since that immeasurable gift of literacy was given to me. So I moved here when I was 18. It was here in San Francisco on the unceded lands of the Ramaytush Ohlone that I became a published writer more than 40 years ago. It's here that my first books were published by City Lights and then the Sierra Club, and later by University of California Press. I really am kind of a homegirl here. And it is here in this library that I've gathered the materials for so many of my books, as well as finding books to read for pleasure and discovery. Thank you, librarians. Thank you, booksellers. Thank you, people of the book. Thank you, book people. Thank you, fellow writers. Thank you, room full of readers. I came home from New Mexico to be here today because it's such an honor to receive this Lifetime Achievement Award from my community. Such an honor and joy to be among family, friends, lovers of books, in this public library, to be in this moment of attack on democracy, in what might be the last great citadel of democracy sponsored by our governments, the public libraries that are open to everyone, that offer the greatest treasures and mysteries and jewels of civilizations to everyone to walk out the door with them in trust. I often think if we asked people, if they thought we could put all the greatest treasures in a house where everyone was free to walk out the door with them, people would say, oh, it's impossible, it would never work, along with the fact that it's socialism, etc. But I also want to salute the people in the room with me. My dear friend and colleague, Lauren Markham, her husband, Lauren and Ben, are you here? Yay, and Lauren has been such a magical companion, muse, fellow writer, conversationalist, and friend, along with her husband, Ben Gucciardi, the poet, but also Paul Yamazaki. I lived inside Paul's vision of the world decades before I met him. I haunted city lights in between sets at the Mabuhay Gardens and punk concerts in the 70s and 80s when I felt too poor to buy the books, so I just read them standing up at the tables. And to be here with my friend and hero, Greg Saris, whose own story is so amazing, and who's brought to life the North Bay I grew up in that was so unstoried by the denial, the erasure of the Native people. He's helped bring back knowledge of, with his beautiful stories, his beautiful vision of what it means to be in this place, of how deep the roots can go, how far the branches can reach in this place. So we're in such a complex place, though. The Sandlot riots how many of you know about the Sandlot riots of 1877? This is really bad. We're fixing that right now. While the rest of the country was convulsed with the closest thing we ever came to a class war in the United States, while St. Louis became a commune, like the Paris Commune only a few years before for months, San Francisco was distorted by anti-Asian hatred into the anti-Chinese riots that almost burned this city down. I don't know if it redeems this place that it's now a library open to all, but it's important to remember these things, and these are the things we learn about in this library, and I think it's important to remember also that this is not the first anti-immigrant, anti-refugee moment we've had in this country's history. Maybe there's some redemption in the fact that the biggest Asian art museum in the country is facing down this site. But I've always tried to trace all these tangles and thickets of meanings with the help of people like Paul, with the help of people like Greg, with the help of this library, with the help of booksellers, with the help of readers who are why I make a living. And so I just think, in some sense, this place has been a refuge. Now it's a nightmare. Some of the depredations happening globally come from the Silicon Valley that's taken over this region in some ways. We're fighting a battle about what this country means, but also what this region, the Bay Area, means. And to spend so many years loving and exploring and writing about this place is to learn to trace those threads woven together in a tapestry of liberation and oppression, creation and destruction. I think about how the Sierra Club was founded here in 1892 and how in some sense it protected so many of the places we loved, but it also erased the indigenous people here to remake it as what John Muir imagined as virgin wilderness, which is a little gendered too, but we'll talk about that another time, or rather I've talked about it a bunch of times before. But at the same, we have such flawed institutions, but they still have possibilities. The Sierra Club begat the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, which renamed as Earth Justice, helped win that lawsuit to close down Alligator Alcatraz just last month. And I'm so honored that my friend Conchita Lozano Bautista, who's legal counsel for Earth Justice, is here in the room with me. So I think a round of applause is due. To know the past of this place is to understand how to dream and build the future of this place, something I think we're all here doing together. And never has it been more crucial. As Hannah Arendt famously said, the ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or the convinced communist, but people to whom the distinction between fact and fiction i.e. the reality of experience and the distinction between true and false, i.e. the standards of thought, no longer exist. We as readers and writers, as critics and publishers, as librarians and supporters of independent bookstores are committed to making and defending those distinctions and supporting the intelligence and informedness to be thoughtful, to understand the difference between fact and fiction. And it does feel a little weird, we just celebrated fiction here, but not in Hannah Arendt's sense. She meant lies. The battle against authoritarianism is fought in the streets, but it's also fought in the imagination. As a great bygone poet of San Francisco, Diane DePrima once said, "The only war that matters is the war in the imagination." In the imagination that has empathy for the refugee in Chicago, the child in Gaza, the homeless elder in the Tenderloin, that can work to grasp the dimensions and impacts of the climate crisis and our internal inseparability from nature and the earth, that can commit to the endlessly rewarding and demanding act of understanding, of learning, of discovering, of remembering. If there's a war against the imagination, there's one for it, and I'm honored to be here with all of you on the side of imagination, of memory, of building a possible future for all the wonderful young people in this room. Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. It's exactly what we needed to hear. Please join us now at the reception with tasty food and drink, the Latino Hispanic Meeting Room, starting now, right across the lobby. The library would love it if we could clear the auditorium and go to the lobby. And there's books to look at there as well. Lovely books, all these lovely books. That would be a great help. And thanks to City Lights Books San Francisco, who helped us a lot this year. And thanks for joining us. See you next year.